Gideon just turned 1.
Yeah. It's exciting.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. And yeah, I can't believe it's already been a year, because I just like feel like I was like breastfeeding and like pumping at your birth and like pregnant, and it just went by really quick.
So fast.
But it's exciting. I love it. I'm enjoying it. Even though like people are like, oh, it's so sad, and like when they get older and grow up. But
True.
I like am really enjoying it. So
each new stage comes with its own excitements and just new things to experience. So
yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It is. I think you had just had him when I learned about you and you being a doula.
Yeah.
So I found you through your dad's chiropractic office, Craig and I. Well, I actually initiated going there because I started having really bad sciatic pain. And Craig had gone to your dad as a child, but never went as an adult to the chiropractor. So I knew of his practice, and I was like, I need to go. Like, I need to figure this out because I'm in so much pain. I'm so uncomfortable. I think I was, 7-ish months by then? No, maybe 6.
Something like, give or take.
Yeah, somewhere around there. I can't remember.
That's okay.
And so I came to the office, and it wasn't even until I was there a few times that your dad mentioned, oh, Emily, my daughter, she's a doula. And I had heard of a doula before, but I had no idea what exactly that meant. So he was like, reach out to her. I think she would be really great. And before meeting you and learning about what you know and what you can help with, we were kind of going into the whole birth thing blind. I was like, I was afraid of it. I was afraid of giving birth. I was afraid of the unknown, of not knowing what to expect. It was, our first child.
Yeah.
So I kind of just wanted to not think about it. I was just going to let it happen and figure it out as it came. But the more that Craig and I both started reading and looking into it, we learned that there's a lot of things that you should be prepared for because there's decision in birth and labor, and they don't really tell you that in all of your appointments leading up to it. So
it's just kind of like you go with the flow, but you're going with their flow and not like anything that and unless you do the work and try to figure it out and understand it.
And then if you I had no idea anything, so I was just going along with whatever they told me and with the process. And so we met you, and you kind of changed our whole thought process, just a different way to view things, and understanding that we have choices. We can make our birth whatever we want. Yeah. And I just think like everybody should know more about it. And I just want you to tell everybody about it and let them know what a doula has to offer. So
for sure.
Oh, by the way, this is Emily.
Hi.
Emily Fry.
I'm waving.
Yeah. Hey. All my fans. She was my doula. She still is a doula, but she's here to talk about what her practice. Yeah, is that what you'd call it?
I don't know. Just doula
expertise.
Work. I don't.
Yeah.
It's like it's a hobby, but also a passion, but also work, but all of that good stuff mixed in together. Yeah. So I mean, I've been a doula it'll be my 5th year. And I just love it. I was really called to it since I was younger, seeing my mom's home births. I witnessed and was a part of that, like cutting my sister's cord, and that kind of like planted the seed, I think, because I've always been like interested, or like midwifery care, birth, that was like always in the back of my mind. But when I was older and after I had my first son, I really started like looking into midwifery, what doulas are more, and ended up taking like the doula route. So ever since then, it's been a learning process, and just like growing and learning in it. But I think everyone doesn't need a doula, but everyone needs to be supported, whether that's a doula, whether that's a friend, whether that's a spouse, whatever that looks like. But everyone needs some type of support. So that's where I come in if that support's needed, and try to like meet people where they're at like, I was just trying to meet you guys where you were at and wanting to learn. And you guys were so open-minded and just kind of...
Which helps.
Yeah. You have to be open-minded because the way that I think society and birth is looked at is from a strong medical perspective, with, I think, like 2% or less having home births. So a lot.
Really?
Yeah, and the rate has gone up since COVID.
Okay,
but
that makes sense.
It's still very, very low. Yeah, which makes sense because people weren't allowed to have their husbands with them when they're having a baby, which is just...
Not even their husbands?
Yeah, there were some people who husbands weren't even with them.
Which goes back to, I remember Craig's grandmother saying when she, I think she had a C-section though. But yeah, her husband, Craig's grandfather, was not allowed to be with her while she gave birth, and I just couldn't even imagine. Just be alone.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
It's
Have
crazy.
nobody there for you.
No, just do it by yourself. And it's really, you'd have to like do a lot of research, but if you look back, even like our grandmothers and grandparents, the way that they gave birth then was so abusive in what they did. And it's just absolutely mind-blowing. Like, it's inhumane the way that births were back then. And
they almost used it, from stories that I've heard, they almost used each experience as educational purposes for everybody to, like, you were like a guinea pig.
Yeah, essentially.
For people to learn from.
Yeah, a lot of them I feel like were. Yeah, I'd agree. It's crazy, but
come a long way.
Yeah, and we still
coming a long way.
There's a lot to improve, I think, in the system, but things are changing, and hopefully there's a shift.
Yes,
continuing.
I think we are just becoming more empowered, and there's just so much more information out there too, and more people like yourself, I feel like, are coming out to talk about a different perspective.
Yeah. And that's where, like, I'll let everyone know I come from a perspective of really just a natural mind. I don't engage with the medical system at all unless I think that it's necessary. There's a time and a place for it, but I think it's so overused and abused, and it's just not necessary. So I come from a perspective of natural living, natural healing. The body was designed to create, sustain life, and women were designed to have babies. And I think if you trust the body and trust your baby, that's the biggest thing in birth. So coming from that perspective and not outsourcing your own, like, innate intelligence, your own intuition, and, like, your God-given ability to discern things. So I'm not, like, a feminist or anything like that, but I try to, like, be more feminine, I guess.
Yeah.
And, like,
it
womanhood.
Is. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, our bodies were literally designed to do this, so you got to trust it. And I feel like anymore, we're just more afraid of it. You know, I remember I was reading one of the books that you had recommended, and it talked about how, like, we all just forget, like, nobody wants to talk about it, but birth is painful. It's going to be, I mean, maybe some people are lucky it's not, but everybody, that's just a known thing. I think part of a story in the book that I read talked about, and I don't know what country it was, but they prepare girls to know that birth is going to be painful. So that way when it comes, they just know that they have to endure it.
Yeah.
And it is painful. It's freaking painful.
Yeah, and the thing with birth is it's the only type of productive, like, sensations that are painful or uncomfortable or not feeling the best, that are productive. Like, you're not going to have pain when you, like, break your arm or stub your toe. That's going to be productive and result in anything productive other than, like, the body trying to heal itself. But when you have those pains, those sensations during childbirth, they're there for a reason, to be productive and to have a baby. So it's the only type of productive pain that you're going to experience, which I think is kind of cool. But,
yeah, I remember you telling me that, and I was like, whoa, I never thought of it that way. But the end result yeah, you have a baby.
Yeah.
It's like you're working for it.
Right.
So can you explain what a doula is?
Yeah.
For those that might not know.
Yeah, sure. So a doula, there's a lot of different perspectives on it, essentially. But a doula is someone that supports women throughout. It can be a birth doula, I guess, throughout pregnancy. They're with them through labor, delivery, and postpartum. So there's different types of doulas. There's birth doulas, there's fertility doulas, there are postpartum doulas. So I do birth doulaing. So I support women throughout pregnancy. And I think education is a huge part of that for women to understand the birth process, how your body works. So you're able to support that and feel confident in your body in pregnancy and throughout labor. So I'm with women. I meet with them. We can go over birth plans. We can go over comfort techniques, how to cope with labor, things like that, mental barriers, just meeting them where they're at. And when labor comes, supporting them physically, emotionally through labor, whether that's hands-on massage or different positions, walking with them, talking with them, or just being a present person in the room, just being a peaceful person to be there with them.
Which you are.
Oh, thanks.
Like, you just, even before, like when I met you the first time, there was just this aura about you that just brought me peace and comfort. And that alone was so helpful because, you know, Craig, as a first-time dad, he had no idea what to expect or how to help me. So I think just having you there, like, you just kind of know the things to say and do. And I don't know, it's just something, like, I remember when I called you when I was in labor, just you talking to me on the phone, like, brought me back down to earth and calmed me down, and just, I don't know, it's just something. So I think this really was your calling, because you kind of have to be this calming, soothing person, like your personality.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And I feel like I really try to have a servant's heart with it, because I'm there to serve you. Like, I'm there to serve you in what you need and what's going on in your labor and birth. So I try to do that, and I really feel like God's put that on my heart. So I appreciate the feedback that just kind of solidifies more of what I'm doing. And, I love to hear that. So,
You're doing great.
Thanks. It sounds like when we're in labor, you're doing great. Keep going.
And it's just crazy how you really can prepare yourself as much, and it's important to, but nothing prepares you than whenever you're actually in the experience and experiencing it yourself for the first time. And I feel like even if you've had multiple children, each pregnancy is going to be different. Each birth is going to be different. So you just kind of have to take each one as its own experience.
Yeah, definitely. And that's like when I meet with women, a lot of times there's all these different questions. I'm like, well, and like, I know you probably know because we talked, but like, yeah, well, this is pretty typical, but everyone's different. I don't know. There's no like crystal ball magical answer.
But we want that. We need that.
We want like that. And that's where I think the whole trusting your body, trusting your baby comes back full circle. But that everyone is different. Every birth is different. Every pregnancy is different. So
I remember just hearing you say that, like, trusting your body. You told me, if you just were in a field somewhere, your body, it would happen. You told me whether you're there or not, you're gonna have this baby. And I was like, that's true.
Yeah.
He's gonna come out.
He's gonna come out. He's not gonna stay in there forever, one way or another.
I don't know. Gideon, he really seemed like he was gonna stay in there forever.
I thought he was, and
because your technical due date, and that's a whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to talk about that? Sure. So I'll kind of like backtrack a little.
Yeah.
So Gideon is my second baby. My first was born about 9 years before him, and he was by a cesarean. because he was breech. I was, 20 at the time, and I didn't know what I know now about birth. So totally different experiences. But I believe that everything's supposed to happen the way it is. There's a reason for it all. But yeah, so Gideon with my husband, I got pregnant, not we. And before I got pregnant, I was having a hard time conceiving. So we were married for about 2 years, and our journey, like trying to conceive, was hard. I did have a miscarriage, I think like 6 months or so, or a year after we first got married. And then after that, there were like no other signs of life forming in me.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. So
How far along were you?
It was very earlier. It was considered like a chemical pregnancy. So I was like 5 weeks is what I was thinking when that happened. And because I was tracking my cycles and testing, I knew that. But usually it just looks like a missed period to most if you're not like paying attention to your cycle. So I was having really, really heavy periods. So I ended up going to see like a fertility, I think, I don't even know, I think it was through UPMC, like their fertility clinic, one of the doctors there. I had some testing done, like blood work, hormones, different internal testing, and everything looked good. Everything was fine. And that's kind of like I went through that process to see like if there was an imbalance, if there was something, like why am I not getting pregnant?
Did they, because I've talked to a few women who have gone through the fertility process. Did they ask you, one thing I've heard is they ask if you've been trying for a certain amount of time. Do they like have to screen you like that? I feel like
there were those questions.
Like they want to make sure you were trying to conceive for at least a year, I think it is. Which,
it's like different, and it's been a little bit since I looked into it. But I think like if it's before 30 years old, if you've been trying, they want you to like try for a year before like reaching out. Or if it's like after 30, like 6 months is like a time frame.
I didn't realize the
I
age.
don't know. Yeah, it's silly. It doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, they did those questions and like all the history and background and everything. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of see if there was like a diagnosis or anything that I could look at and try to heal myself or whatever that might look like. But I didn't need to because everything looked fine in their eyes. So I don't even know the time period of all that, but I ended up getting pregnant, and I contacted them and was like, I'm pregnant. So they came in, they had me come in for like an initial testing for an ultrasound, and I did that. My sister went with me. We went and I had that done. And there was like an embryo forming, and I was pregnant. And I was really like, I had a lot of anxiety. I was really nervous because I had a miscarriage and because like I wasn't getting pregnant and now I was. So there was a lot of like anxiety around that.
Right. Because it just, I mean, you were trying and wanting it to happen, but it just happened.
Yeah. So it happened. We got pregnant naturally. Like I didn't do any like fertility medications or anything like that. I was doing a lot of like supplements, herbal things, and just trying to be healthy. But that happened and had the ultrasound. Embryo was there. And then I ended up going back, I think it was like a couple weeks later to see if there was a heartbeat and to make sure that the embryo was growing where it was supposed to be and not anywhere else. And so I went to that appointment and heartbeat was there. Baby was growing in my uterus where it needed to be. And I left there and I'm like, I knew that the baby was going to be okay. And we left. I'm like, that was stupid. I'm never doing that again. Like, I knew that, like, God, this is all in his plan. And if it is in his plan, it's going to be a good plan. So I'm like, I'm never going to do that again. So that was the last time I stepped into a doctor's office during my pregnancy.
Really?
Yeah. So,
and at that point you were...
I was like 8 or 10 weeks pregnant.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's still early, and we left there, and I was like, I'm done.
And at this point, you've already been a doula for quite some time.
Around 2 years or so. Just trying to think of the timeline.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
9 months.
Yeah. Trying to count on my fingers.
Like 2 years, yeah.
Yeah. So after
you've been around multiple other births, experienced. You probably have more knowledge at this point than with your first son. So
yeah, definitely. So with just like being a doula and just me doing research and podcasts and listening and just educating myself overall about birth and the process, and just my faith and everything, I just didn't see a need for it.
Now, what did the doctors say? Like, did you just tell them, I'm not coming back, or you just never, like, how did that happen? I feel like...
Yeah, I asked
they would hound you. You need to come back.
Right, because that's usually what happens. And they did. Like, they kept calling to, like, schedule follow-up appointments, and I don't even think I returned phone calls. But before we left, like, the doctor, nurse, whoever came in, and I was like, so is there any reason why this would be, like, high risk? Because, like, it was taking so long. They're like, no, like, you can... It's like, could I do midwife, home birth? Like, there's no, like, issue. No. So it was fine. And I was like, okay, thanks. Have a good day. And that was it. So
did they tell you your due date at that point?
No, they didn't.
Because I remember when I went in, I think it was maybe around 8 or 12 weeks when I had my first ultrasound. Was an internal one. And the ultrasound tech, like, hounded me about my cycle and how many... And we weren't tracking. We were trying, but we weren't trying. Does that make sense? We weren't stopping it.
We were just preventing it.
We were just letting it happen. And so I'd never been one to track. I was on birth control before we tried to conceive, which I'm not returning back on because that's a whole... I just feel like this whole
other podcast.
Yeah, this whole experience just opened my eyes about a lot of things. So I just don't want the extra hormones and things in me. But
yeah.
So I used birth control and had regular periods, so I've never counted my cycle days or whatever. And she was, like, so mad that I wouldn't tell her if I was 28 days or 29. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
She's like, well, what day was your last missed, or your period before the missed one? I was like, I think around here. And she's like, well, your due date's going to be off. I was like, okay, well, I don't know what you want me to tell you.
Yeah. Like, I don't know.
And I just, is that a big deal? I mean...
okay, down the line, I feel like it can, not necessarily it can be a big deal, but when you're giving birth in the hospital, typically, like, they don't let you air quotes, go past a certain time frame.
I think it's 41 weeks, I think, is their cutoff.
Usually they try to induce you at 39 weeks.
Yeah, they do. They offer it as if it's a... choice on the menu. Yeah. Sign up today to schedule your baby's birth.
Yeah, literally, like, on your 39-week appointment, I've been in with people.
They did that with me.
Yeah.
You can if you want. I was like, no, I'm okay.
Yeah, so, like, if your due date's off, then, like, if you get induced, you can be inducing yourself way too early.
True.
And the baby's going to come out when it needs to, I think. So.
Right. I see what you're saying, though, in the perspective of if they wanted, in an ideal world where they want to induce you, your due date would be very important because if they do it too early, then
right, all the extra risks and things like that they'll throw at you going beyond a certain time frame.
So did you just calculate yourself, because you'd been pretty much tracking?
Yeah, so I was tracking a lot, and then right before I got pregnant, I stopped tracking for, like, a few months because mentally it just wasn't healthy for me. So I wasn't, like, tracking as much as I used to be. So it was like a guesstimate, and I guessed myself when it was. So my due date was January 18th that I came up with. So I don't know.
And when was Gideon born?
February 22nd.
So in everybody else's mind, they were just like, what?
Yeah.
You're going a whole month past your due date?
Right. So I'm like, I think it's this, but I mean,
he'll come when he's ready.
Yeah. He's going to come out and I'll have a baby at some point.
Yeah. I think it seems like they just want you to stress out about this date. And when, like, why would a baby know to come out on that date?
Yeah.
They don't know.
No, they don't know. It's like a very, like, ridiculous low percent that babies are actually born on their due date.
Right.
So.
But then everybody just stresses about it. I remember when I was creeping up on my due date, people were like, is he coming yet? How are you feeling? I was like, good. He's still in there.
Yeah. You'll know when he's born.
Yeah. I'll let you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It is like a big thing. That's like whole, like when I tell people, I'm like, you got to have good boundaries around that because it's stressful on the mom too. Yeah. Like you're excited and anxious and nervous and all like these
uncomfortable at the end, you know, all these other things,
all these feelings,
nervous, like
you want to meet your baby too. Yeah. You don't know when the baby's coming unless you schedule it. But yeah, you're in the same boat as everyone else wondering.
Except for you're the pregnant one.
Except for you're the one with the baby.
You're the one that has to push him out. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I think there needs to be, it just needs to be changed to like a due week or due time frame.
Yeah.
The due date is
outdated.
It's silly.
That's what I tell people. I'm like, give or take 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after is a pretty good rule of thumb, I think.
Which is so nerve-wracking to not know. I just remember getting to the end and you're just like, I could have my baby today. I could have my baby next week. I really don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
And you were like, every week, every day, you're like, still no baby.
Yep.
We're still going.
Still going.
And then if you want to talk about your experience with your home birth, I think you are amazing.
Oh.
You birthed Gideon with your husband right by your side.
Yeah.
In your home.
Yeah.
On your own.
Yeah.
After having a cesarean for your first birth. So that's two, completely different ways. So I'm so curious. And I know a lot of women who have had cesareans are afraid to have a vaginal birth, like for their second one. So I think it would be really neat for you to talk about that experience. And
yeah. So I didn't want to do any more appointments. That just wasn't the route I wanted to take. I didn't want to be involved with the medical system at all. I did reach out to different midwives at first to talk with them, see if I liked anyone.
I guess we should also clarify what's the difference between a midwife and a doula.
Yeah, so midwife, they do, I guess you could say, the medical things. Like they can do cervical checks. Some can prescribe ultrasounds. Some can do that kind of stuff. They are there for a lot of different things, but
I feel like they're kind of the in-between of a doula and a doctor, maybe?
Yeah, kind of. And there's different types of midwives. But yeah, for at home, like making sure the mom's okay, looking for signs of distress with the mom or baby. If there's emergencies, they know how to take care of that. They're just as, if not more experienced. I would think they are actually more experienced in women giving birth than OBs and the ones you find in the hospital because
they're there.
They're there and they trust the process of birth. At least most of them do. But yeah, doulas can't do any, like we can't do cervical checks, which I wouldn't want to anyways, but I can't like check your heart rate or blood pressure or like Doppler. I can't do anything like that. I'm there for emotional and physical support for the mom to get her through labor and the family that's there to support them.
So if a woman would want to have a home birth, but they also wanted a medical professional there, a midwife could be an option.
Yeah, definitely.
They'll be able to, I know that was a question one of my moms in the group asked was if you're doing a home birth and there were to be medical emergencies, how would that be handled? But the midwife is there.
Yeah, a midwife is there, and they are fully capable of handling situations that would come up. And a lot of the times in birth, there are symptoms leading up to an emergency. So there's different signs and symptoms of whatever that might be that they would be able to recognize and handle. So either they would take care of it there or you would get transferred to a hospital, depending what it is. But home birth is safe for women that are low risk and trust birth. So it's actually ideal. It's easier to give birth in home than in the hospital because you're fighting so many different outside aspects of it, preparing mentally to go into the hospital, out of your safe zone, out of your home. But yeah, they're able to help with any type of complications at home and whatever those complications might be.
Yeah, the fact that you said the giving birth at home is just more comfortable. I remember you preparing me for the transition from being in labor at home to being in labor at the hospital.
Yeah.
And looking back, that is where everything, my whole plan and things I wanted changed, because I was in labor for probably almost 7 hours by the time we went to the hospital. And I mean, I was in so much pain, but Craig even saw it, you know, from an outsider perspective. I was just in the moment in pain. Like, I was sick, tired.
Yeah.
And he was like, I saw how you were handling contractions and everything at home. And then as soon as we went to the hospital, it was like totally different. So, and it is, because I wasn't at home. I could be, you know, kneeling on the floor, like, and I wasn't really in bed because I couldn't sit, but I could like be near the couch, you know what I mean? And then as soon as you're in the hospital, you're in this like hard, not comfortable space. Yeah. Like the only way where I could be was on the leaning against the back of the hospital bed. It was really the only place I could be.
Yeah, it shifts the way labor and birth is when you make that change. But yeah, there's a lot of unpacking there.
I know. And my whole plan was, I remember Craig, he was trying to get me to stay so hard. My whole plan was to have you there at home and to get to the hospital just in time to push the baby out and go home and everything be great. But like I said, once you're in the moment and experiencing it for yourself, things obviously change. And Craig just was, before we even got there, I was like, Craig, he's coming out right now. We need to go to the hospital right now. He's like, Emily's not here. Wait, just wait for her to come. She's on her way. I was like, nope, tell her we're going to the hospital right now.
Yeah, I remember like getting there. I think it was like around like 6 a.m.
And I think that's what did me over, was it being all night long and not sleeping.
And that's the hardest part. Like, exhaustion is like the number one reason women transfer from home birth to hospital, because they're just exhausted. But yeah, it's hard when you're tired and exhausted. Yeah.
And I remember you coming in and just meeting me on the ground where I was, and, you know, just being there for me. And Craig didn't really know like what to do. I remember at one point in the hospital, he was just looking at me like to help, and I turned around and I was like, what?
What are you staring at?
Yeah, it's like, you know, you can feel everybody staring at you.
Right.
He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I just wanted to help.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, sorry.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, husbands or partners, they love you and care about you, but with having a support person as a doula in the hospital with you can be so important, because they have that extra knowledge. Yes. But they can never replace that type of love and care and safety that a husband or partner has. So,
yeah, I think I had the most perfect support system. I remember leading up to, you know, when I was going to give birth, I reached out to the hospital to ask, because I know with COVID there was all these different rules with how many people could be there. Yeah. And they told me 2. And, you know, I thought of you as one person and Craig as the other. So I was like, sorry, Mom, we can't be there.
Oh, yeah, your mom was, she kind of like snuck in but didn't. Yeah.
She was so upset that I was going to have you there. But she understood. She was like, okay, that's fine. And then, she just was there. Yeah. At one point, she just walked in the door. I looked, I'm like, how are you in here? She's like, I don't know. I'm just going to sit in the back and pretend like I'm not here. Yeah. Someone tells you to leave. And turns out you were considered a medical
part of the medical
team,
staff,
so you weren't my other person I could have, so she got to stay. And so having you, her, and Craig there was just huge. And so I could see how so many more women would want to give birth at home during COVID, because I could not have done that alone.
Yeah, I couldn't fathom being alone in a hospital, and then with all these strangers too,
telling you all these things that you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine it crazy, mind-blowing, but it's what it was.
Yeah. Well, you didn't have a choice, which is so weird, because what, I don't know, it's just a whole the COVID thing, just whole other thing. But back to your birth experience.
I know we keep chatting. It's fine.
So you looked into midwives, but
yeah, I spoke with a lot of them, and there's a lot that I recommend and love, but I just felt called to do it on my own, and that's what I wanted to do. And I kind of like humored my husband, I guess, by like meeting these midwives and talking with them. And I'm like,
because he was more like, we should have somebody there.
Yeah.
Just in case, you know.
Right. And that was like his thing, like the whole like just in case, like all the what ifs.
Yes.
Like, and I'm like, well, A, do you even know like what are those what if situations that you're fearful of? And are you even capable of handling those situations? And so that's like, it's like the men thing. They want to help you. They want to take care of you. And that's what he wanted to be able to do. And I mean, he had a lot of training with being in the Marines, and his training with that, and like, I don't even know, but
he had some sort of knowledge.
Right.
Of
different things he could help me with.
Right.
But
at the end of the day,
he didn't have to do anything. I'm like, just be there. Yeah. Just be with me.
And I'll tell you what to do, and you have to do that exact thing.
Yes.
If I want you to get away from me, please do. If I want you to be right here, please do.
Right. And that's what it was. I'm like, just listen to me. Yep. And so we like went back and forth. I was like pregnant. I just had a wild pregnancy. I just took care of myself as I saw fit, and ate and took supplements and took care of my body and self. And ended up not going with anyone and just planned for us. So I did a lot of education. There was a lot of mental work and
preparation.
Yeah.
Making sure you had things that you would need. Yeah. I wouldn't even know what you need. I know the tub.
Yeah.
Key.
I did have a tub. But yeah, like all the things like to prepare myself for those like what if situations and figuring out what those were. And when you do the work and you understand how birth works and how the body works without interference, there are little emergencies that happen that would happen. Like there's actually not a lot of things that could happen in a normal, safe setting without being intervened and interfered with. But I figured out
like small things that you can overcome,
right?
Type of thing without needing it to be emergency.
Yeah,
like they make things seem like an emergency when they're not. Maybe
Correct.
not.
Yeah, like having a cord around the neck.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking of, because that was part of our birth preference was to do the delayed cord clamping, and that's the other reason why like we wanted like you to give us more knowledge about the benefits to that. You know, it gives the rest of the life from the placenta to the baby. And that was pretty important to us, but things happen so fast, and I feel that we had an OB that wasn't super supportive of our preferences. I mean, she wasn't.
No, she wasn't.
No. And she knew that we weren't agreeing, and I think she forced a lot of her preferences over that, and one being the cutting the cord, because it was so fast. She was like,
it was so fast,
it's wrapped around his head, I have to cut it, and we're like, ugh. And it just happened.
And she had, in my opinion, a huge savior complex, and which I see a lot in that industry, in the birth industry, and the doctors. And yeah, she did what she wanted to. I don't think having a cord around the neck is an emergency. It's not. Like,
at what point would it be, do you think?
I don't know, because like if you see a cord around the neck, the baby's coming out.
Right.
You simply unwrap the cord, and the cord's off.
Yeah. Why would it be so tight that you couldn't do that?
I mean, if there's a short cord, and like the baby can't come out anymore, I guess like there could be certain situations, or if you would feel that the baby's in a lot of distress. I don't know, honestly.
It'd have to be like in the moment.
Yeah, I feel like you'd have to go with your intuition and what setting that you're in as well. But from the time that she like cut Cash's cord, like his head was out enough and his like upper body was coming out,
right,
where you could see the cord around the neck. She felt like she needed to cut it right away. But from that point to like the 3 seconds later where his whole body was born
would not have caused a problem.
Right. I think that she intentionally did that because she wanted to do what she wanted to do and didn't respect what you wanted.
Yep. And I think I think they were annoyed at how long I was taking to have him because I pushed for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I think that was frustrating them too, that I was taking too long, you know.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing at the hospital, you're on a time, you know, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, time crunch.
Yeah, you're on like a clock.
A clock, yeah, that was what I was trying to say. Yeah. They want you to have this baby in so much time, and sometimes it takes. I mean, I'm glad that she did agree that I was having this baby vaginally, and she didn't ever bring up a cesarean as an option.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that, but yeah, there's just a lot of things that I think she was just frustrated that I wasn't going along with what she wanted me to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is very frustrating, and you see that a lot, unfortunately. I see that a lot in birth work, and that's why I kind of decided to step back from supporting in-hospital births, because it's just crazy what these doctors are doing when they're supposed to be there for you.
And it's kind of hard because birth, like a lot of stuff happens so fast.
Yeah.
So even if you have a plan and you don't want to do XYZ, things happen so fast in the moment. So
yeah, there's a lot that goes on, and that's why like having a good support team and preparing yourself ahead of time,
and people there to speak for you, because you're in pain and tired and out of it, and you're not going to be able to maybe speak or think things through as clear as you would in a normal situation.
No, you can't. And like that's actually like proven, like that part of your brain, that decision making part of your brain is not shut off, but your body's focusing on having a baby. So like that part of your brain isn't functioning the way it would be if you weren't in labor. So yeah, when they are giving you all these things to sign or check here, sign here, all this
asking
paperwork,
you questions, so many questions,
100 of the same questions over again, and it just to have people there that are on the same page with you is really good. So yeah, we just
again
we keep going on and on.
No, these are good.
It's like good. Intermission.
Good points to bring up. So you educated yourself, prepared yourself for as much as you could.
Yeah.
Beforehand.
Yeah, and I did a lot of research, any type of like emergency situations, what I would do in that, if I were to transfer, like what would that look like, and just a lot of prep. And my husband saw that and saw my confidence in what I was doing. And he caught up and got on the same page with me mentally. I don't know if ever 100%.
I'm sure he had different fears and worries in the back of his mind, but he was like, all right, this is what she wants to do. So
yeah, and those never came up. If he did have fears, like they did come up in my birth space, they weren't present and I couldn't tell.
That's great.
So he just ultimately trusted me and my confidence and all the work I was doing. So it was good. We got on the same page. We were having the baby at home at some point, and we planned for that. And you know what? Honestly, if you're going to have your baby at home, like, you don't need to buy all the gadgets and special things. Like, you honestly would have everything you would need at home right now if you had a baby.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. I was like, what? Are you sure?
Yeah.
I don't feel like I do.
Like, without any complications, things like that would be abnormal. Yeah, you really wouldn't need anything. I mean, most people don't plan for that, but just saying.
Kind of want to, keep it clean.
Yeah.
Because birth is messy. It does get messy.
Oh my gosh, so messy. Yeah. So yeah, I prepared mentally. I had a lot of fears, and I did a lot of mental work with those. And that's so important too, like having those fears, because those fears are going to come up if you don't face them. And especially in your birth space while you're in labor, those fears are going to come up, and that can change how you labor and how you birth. But I went until I was 43 weeks and 4 days, I think, almost 44 weeks pregnant. It was crazy. And
you're really ready to have that baby.
Yeah. And I was like, the whole time I kept thinking, like, what if he's breech? And I think that kept coming up from my first birth.
Yep. That's a normal concern to think to previous experiences, especially if it had some trauma with it or had some, fears in itself. That's,
Yeah. So I kept, I did a lot of, what's the word, like baby, like belly mapping to try to like figure out the position where he was. And I kept trying to do that and did a lot of research. I even reached out to some midwives or friends that I know and was like, oh, well, maybe like, would you be able to like help me to check his position? And I never went with that because it just didn't feel right with me. But he wasn't breech. I prepared to have him at home if he was breech.
Really?
So I did a lot of research with that. Breech Without Borders is a good resource for anyone interested in learning
we'll
about.
Have to add that. Is it like a website?
Yeah, Breech Without Borders. It's an organization. They have a website. There's a lot of education that they have on there. But yeah, I
feel like that's another thing that doctors scare you into, like, oh, this baby's gonna be breech. Can't do it vaginally.
Yeah. Well, and they're not trained. They're not trained to do that.
Right.
It's just not. It's not common that they do that. But I think babies know how and when they need to be born. So if he was breech, I was prepared to have him breech, whatever that would have looked like. But yeah, I did a lot of that, a lot of facing my fears, mental work, and I was getting so close to. I was past my due date, and I was excited and just waiting. And my husband was. Creating his barbershop. It was brand new, so we were in there painting one day, like scrubbing the floors, painting, and I'm like past my due date, pregnant.
How were you doing?
I don't know. I have a picture of me and I look so miserable painting, and it's so funny. Like
this is what's gonna get him out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
Seriously, because I was like on my hands and knees scrubbing the floor, and I'm like, oh gosh,
I'm gonna give birth on this floor and have to rewash it again.
Seriously, yeah, I'm gonna have to clean this again. And that night we went out to dinner, and I'm like having different contractions because I was having Braxton Hicks the whole time since the beginning of my pregnancy, but these were different. And I'm sitting at dinner and I'm Googling, what does labor feel like? Like everything that I knew just like went out of my brain.
That Google.
Yeah. And I'm like, what do real contractions feel like? And I'm like, oh, you dummy. Like,
Yeah.
Like,
but it is. You just... Everyone says you'll know, but then you're like, how will I know? If I've never done it before, how am I going to know? Is this... I even questioned it for so long when my labor started.
Yeah,
I didn't want to wake Craig up too soon. I didn't want to call you too soon, but yeah, you do know, actually.
Yeah, you'll know. And yeah, that wasn't it. That wasn't labor. It came like 2 weeks later. But that wasn't it. But it was a good, like, oh, this is kind of what it feels like.
My body's getting ready.
Because with my first son, I didn't have any contractions. I didn't have any, like, labor symptoms to say, I guess.
Really? Was your C-section, like, emergency or planned?
So it was a little bit of both, I guess.
Okay.
I guess you could call it emergency. I was 37 weeks with Avon, my first, and I was working with the midwives at McGee at the time, and I remember calling them because I'm like, something just doesn't feel right, like something's off, like nothing physically felt wrong, but it was just like my intuition, my gut, like something was like something weird. So they told me to come in. I went in, they did a cervical exam, and I was like 4 centimeters dilated, and his foot was like right there. And they're like, oh, you have to have a C-section. I'm like, oh, okay. So, boom, that happened.
I see.
So, yeah, I didn't, like, have any...
That's crazy. You have 4 centimeters and you had no...
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's so different.
Everything's different.
Every pregnancy is different, even when you are the one pregnant multiple times. And you're still going to question if you're in labor, even if you've done it before.
Yeah. So, like, you're in labor when your baby's coming out of you.
Yep.
Like,
yes.
That's when you
know. It doesn't matter if you go to your 39-week appointment and you're 1 centimeter dilated. No. That means literally nothing.
It means nothing, because you could be like that for weeks, or you could have your baby that night.
Literally. So
it's the fun unknown of pregnancy. But yeah, so at that point, so barbershop, I was having some contractions that night, and I'm trying to think of the timeline of everything, but I started to lose my mucus plug a little bit. It was probably around that time. I was starting to lose it little by little, and I know like that's one of the signs your cervix is starting to get ready and open, and you're shedding part of it for the baby to come out. But your mucus plug can like regenerate. So
again, one of those things that means nothing, kind of.
Right.
I mean, it means your body's getting ready, but
yeah, it's getting ready, but it could again mean nothing. So I was losing that, and there was one night where Avon, my oldest, who was 8 at the time, he has like asthma, allergy issues, and he was having a really, really hard time breathing. So I was with him that night, and we were out on the couch, like he was sitting up, and I'm like, should I take him to the emergency room? And I was just like up with him, like keeping an eye on him, making sure he was okay, because he was really struggling. And we were up all night, and it was around 3 a.m. I went to the bathroom, and I'm like, oh, there's blood, and there's more mucus and all kinds of fun stuff. And I'm like, oh, yes, like this is it. And I went from the bathroom to the couch out in the living room, and I tried to lay down again. I'm like, I'm just going to go back to bed because it's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And cramping.
Need to rest.
Yeah. Cramping started right away. And laying down was not comfortable. So, like, I just, like, kind of sat there and tried to lay there and sleep, but it didn't happen. I went in and told my husband, I'm like, hey, I'm in labor, finally. He's like, are you? I was like, yeah. And he went back to bed. So, he can't do anything at that time. I think I ended up getting a shower, and that felt okay, but it didn't do anything for me.
I remember leading up to labor, anytime I'd have pains during pregnancy, you're always like, drink water or take a bath. And I was never a bath person pre-pregnancy. I didn't understand the whole hype on adults taking baths. But then I learned, and I loved taking baths when I was pregnant. And so when I was in labor, I was just thinking of you. I was like, Emily would tell me to get in the bath. So I tried, and I was like, nope, this is not it. I don't want to be in here. This is not helping me. So I knew at that point the water wasn't for me at that stage.
And that's the thing. Some people like plan and prepare, like, oh, we're gonna have this beautiful water birth, but like they get in the water and it does not feel good. So
I didn't like it.
No. So I had a shower, and I was just like sitting down, laying down, and like walking around. And contractions, I started to like time them on my phone a little bit for I think like the first hour, because I'm like, oh, gosh, is this like finally it? But I stopped because I wasn't planning on timing them. I don't see a lot of value in timing contractions, because I just think your labor is going to progress. If you're in labor, your contractions are going to progress, and your body's going to do what it needs to do, and you're going to have a baby. And I didn't want the stress of like trying to time it. For me, it just
focusing on that. You wanted to focus on your body and your baby.
Yeah, like that extra stress of like clicking my phone, like just seems silly to me.
Yeah.
And I knew I didn't want to look at the clock either. Like I did not want to look at the clock. I did not want to know what time it was. So my time of everything was when I could hear the bus in the morning. Like the bus came to pick up the neighbor. And that's like when I knew, I'm like, oh, it's early. And then at that point, I was like, you need to call Mackenzie, my sister, and you need to blow the tub up now, the pool up now. And for the most part, I was like standing and walking and in my bathroom the whole time. It just like felt like a good place.
Yeah.
So he did that. My sister came over, and she ended up taking my son to like a Med Express or something, because he was up all night and just not doing well. So we were up.
Of course, of all times.
I know. I was like on zero
when
sleep.
One baby needs you, so does the other one.
Yeah. So.
And yeah, zero sleep. Gosh.
Yeah, that's always just the way labor happens. I feel like you're up.
Always in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
there has to be a statistic where it's like gotta be 90%, something high.
It is. It's very high that most labor starts in the middle of the night.
Insane.
Because
I guess you're relaxed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your body's in like that rest cycle, and I can't quote all the stats off the top of my head.
Yeah,
but yeah, it typically does start in the middle of the night. So yeah, I was like just laboring, doing my thing, just walking around, and he blew the tub up, filled it up. And it was in our living room. And for those, if you ever have a home birth with a pool or a tub, I recommend getting a water heater. It was like an immersion heater.
I was thinking that, like, do you have to like replace the water?
Yeah,
keep it warm.
Sometimes, like, there's different pools and tubs and stuff. They can get really expensive, like hundreds of dollars for one-time use, or midwives usually have them. And some of them will stay really warm, or sometimes you have to like keep refilling and adding hot water depending how long and when you fill it up. But the heater, it was like $30 on Amazon, and it was like the best thing that we did because it gauged the temperature. We could keep it warm, or we could turn it off and then turn it back on.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so that was great little tidbit. So I was in and out. I was in and out of the tub a lot, on my hands and knees in the tub. And I don't even know, like I was in there for hours, like in and out, and in the bathroom. And I was in the bathroom, and this was towards the end of labor when I really needed my husband. I remember in the beginning, like when contractions were starting,
you just want to
really
be on your
strong.
own.
I did want to be on my own, and I remember telling him, like, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this. And texting my friend Sarah, and I'm like, I can't do this. And she's like, you can. She was very encouraging. She's also a doula.
I think I said those exact words to you, too.
Yeah.
I think that's a normal thing for every woman, too.
Yeah.
Every woman to feel that.
Right. And because, I mean, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And they all gave me encouragement, which was what I needed. And it was just kind of like, I knew that I could do it, but
you need to hear it from someone else, too.
Yeah, like that reassurance
extra, yes,
was helpful. So that was early on, but I was laboring a lot in the bathroom, and I got to this point, and I'm assuming is what my like transition period was the hardest part. And I was holding on to like my husband, like around his neck and shoulders, and standing and getting up on my tiptoes, and like just holding on to him and like anchoring onto him during contractions, or like holding on to the bathroom countertop and just like holding on my tippy toes. Like that was just like my anchor. And that was the hardest part. And I did that for a long time. So I was standing for a big majority of that. And
exhausting.
It was.
After
it was
not
so
sleeping.
Exhausting.
I remember myself, I was on my knees a lot. That was what was comfortable for me. And at one point, my body was just so weak. I was shaking. I don't know if you remember, my whole like leg was just like a leaf shaking, and pain and exhaustion.
And labor shakes happen too. So that could have been a part of like labor, like all your hormones and everything, but also like you're exhausted in your muscles and everything too. But so onto him in the bathroom, and at one point he's like, maybe like you should like get back in the tub. And I'm like, I don't know if I can get there. And so he went out in the living room, and I started to like make my way there, and I had to stop because I was having another contraction. And I think I was on my hands and knees, like crawling at this point.
I will get to the tub.
Yeah, from the bathroom to the tub, which wasn't far. It was probably like 15 feet, but it was
in labor.
Like a mile,
that's so long. Yeah,
literally. And get to the tub. I got in somehow, and I was laboring in there on my hands and knees. And then also at some point I got to like my back, but I wasn't like on my back. So I was like sitting back, but my hands were underneath me. So like my butt wasn't on the ground. Like I was like holding myself up, because sitting down and having that pressure was no good.
Yep. Didn't want to do that.
Yeah, forget it. And I could feel him descending. And it was like the craziest, best feeling, like feeling him descending through the birth canal.
Wow.
Like, I could feel him coming down in my body. And I would keep putting my fingers inside me, like, is this his head? Like, can I feel something? Are we close? And it was his head that I was feeling. I didn't know what I was feeling.
Right.
But it was
something's there and it's coming out.
Yeah. And
I think it's a baby.
Right. Yeah. Fingers crossed. But yeah, so I was definitely feeling his head in there.
I feel like this is it. It's happening. He's coming.
Yeah. So I was like on my back and holding myself up in like the weirdest position. And you can't stop it. Like, there is no stopping a baby that's coming out. And it was just crazy to feel him coming down with each sensation, with each contraction. And I am trying to like breathe through it, trying to just like not fight my body into tense and let him do what he needed to do and let my body do what it needed to do. And I'm trying to like think, because there was no like time, like there's no timeline.
You had no idea what time it was at this point.
It was close. I found out it was like close to like 3:30. Wow. Because I remember hearing the bus.
You've been going 12 hours.
Yeah. From start to finish, it was around 12 hours. And so he's like coming and I'm like not pushing. I don't know if
the fetal reflex.
Yeah, we talked about fetal ejection reflex.
Yep, that's it.
So I really wanted to wait for that because I didn't want to force any pushes when he wasn't ready. And so I definitely felt that. Like, my body was doing its own thing without me.
Because that's what the point of contractions are.
Right, yeah.
Your body, like...
Squeezing them down and out.
Down and out. That's where you gotta go.
And, yeah, he was coming, and I felt him so close to the opening of my vagina, and I was like, it feels like my asshole's on fire.
The ring of fire.
Yeah, and so my husband is beside me on his phone. Literally, he was on a
ass
Google
on
search.
fire, wife and labor.
Yeah, he was reading Ring of Fire at that moment. He told me, he's like, "Yep, that's it. That must be it." And I was
like, "Thank you."
He told
validation.
me later, and I'm like, "Yeah, that makes sense." It was funny, but yeah, so he was there crowning, and I'm like feeling him touching him. His head comes out, and that was like a big relief. And I'm like, oh, just like his head coming out and not just sitting there at my opening crowning. That felt good. He came out, and that was really cool. So I'm feeling his head there, and I end up turning over to my hands and knees. And I could feel him turning, because babies will make a turn. Their shoulders and body will start to turn when they are ready to like twist and turn and come out.
Okay.
And so I can feel him turning, and like the fetal ejection reflex is what I believe it was, and just like came
that
out,
last
like
push.
Blasted out. And my husband was there. He caught him. He had a Noogle hand, so his hand also was up by his face when he was coming out.
Okay.
And his cord was around his neck, so my husband just like undid his cord and gave him to me. I turned over, and he like handed him to me. I had him up on my chest. I was holding him. His color was great. And I'd never had like that, like you see in like the movies or videos like that, like relaxation, like soaking it in. I didn't really have that because I was so focused on him, because I took full responsibility of me and the baby.
Yeah.
So I was so focused on making sure he's okay, I'm okay. And he was okay. He opened his eyes before he even had his first cry.
I'm here.
Yeah. And I was rubbing his back, just kind of stimulating him. He let out like a little chirp, like a little squeak, gurgled cry. And then I did suction him. I used my mouth and just suctioned out of his nose and mouth with my mouth. And then just like was rubbing him, talking to him. And He was perfectly pinked up, and ended up letting out a cry maybe a couple minutes later. And it was cold in the tub at this point, so we got out because we needed to keep him warm. Still attached to the cord, to the placenta in me. And so I got out. I'm like laying on the floor. He was great. My husband ended up cutting his cord. It was white. It was ready to be cut, because we did a lot of preparation of cutting the cord, and when and all that. And so he did that, and I was bleeding a lot. And the tub was the pool was very, very red, and I was bleeding a lot, and I was very lightheaded. I just had a baby. Looking back now, I'd do things differently.
Right.
But at that time, he's like, can I call for assistance? And he's like, you're bleeding a lot. And I'm like, and I was very
how do you know? Yeah. How do you know how much is, because you're going to bleed after birth.
Right.
So how much is too much? How much is what you're supposed to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there's a rule of thumb. It might be 5 milliliters.
Yeah, but
5
who
liters.
Is measuring that?
Right.
I don't even know what
it's
I'd have to Google that, you know?
Yeah. I don't even remember off the top of my head anymore, what that is, to be honest. And usually it's by how it looks and how you feel.
Okay.
And I felt lightheaded. I felt like I was going to pass out. So, I just had a baby. I just had a baby.
Did you see me? I was very sickly looking.
Yeah. You just had a baby. You just were in labor. Your
body
forever.
just gave everything it had.
So naturally, I feel like you're gonna not feel 100%. And I wasn't prepared for that. I guess I wasn't prepared for how I was gonna feel immediately after. So I did. I'm like, yeah, you can. So he called for an ambulance. They came probably 15 minutes later. So baby was fine. He had the baby bundled up. And they were really concerned about him. They're like, no, we cut the cord. Everything's good. And they're like, oh, yeah, he's good. He's fine.
Yep, it's me. Can you help me out?
Yeah, so I was just laying there. And what I thought so he cut the cord, and the placenta's still inside me. Cord's hanging out still. And I thought my placenta was coming out when they arrived. And it ended up not being my placenta. It was just a huge blood clot.
Oh, wow.
It was just a giant blood clot.
Wow.
Which is normal. It's not an abnormal thing to have.
I know what's the size they say that's okay after?
It varies because so
golf balls. I remember it being something insane.
Yeah.
To think about a blood clot that big, but that's supposed to happen.
Yeah, and I reached out to a midwife who was so helpful that after I was home and everything after the hospital, but I had a blood clot the size of the palm of my hand, and it was huge, and I was a little nervous. She's like, as long as you don't keep having them, as long as you don't have continuous heavy bleeding, and I didn't. That was it when that happened. But yeah, so I transferred. I had to go in a separate ambulance than the baby because it's just the rules. My husband was with the baby because I wanted the baby to go with me no matter what. And we ended up going to McGee and get there, asking me all these questions. And to be honest, I was so afraid to tell them. And I didn't tell them that I had a planned free birth because of just the way the system works. I was afraid for CPS or them to, there's medically kidnap my baby or me being negligent, which none of those things were true.
Right.
But we were there in the hospital and I told them.
You said, you didn't really plan for this part of it, so.
Yeah. I knew that my husband was on the same page with me, with our not morals, but our goals and what we want.
Yeah.
So I felt confident in him answering questions and making decisions for me and for the baby. But I didn't plan for it because I didn't think that was going to happen. But, birth happens and unplanned things happened. And so we get to the hospital. I am in whatever area they bring me in. My placenta was still in me. I did lose a lot of blood, and I was still bleeding. I was like green in the pictures. Like, I don't even look like me. And they wanted the placenta. I tried pushing out, and I just like couldn't. I bet if I got up on my hands and knees or something, I could have. Or if I went by myself, I could have.
Use gravity or something.
Yeah, like I just was laying on my back in a hospital bed, completely depleted. Yeah. So I did consent for the one like nurse midwife. She took my placenta out, and it was very low lying, so it was right there at the opening of my cervix. It was
ready.
I probably could have pulled it out myself, but I just wasn't in the right headspace at that moment. Placenta came out, and they wanted to do a blood transfusion because of the way I looked and felt and my numbers and everything that they were running. I didn't want to do a blood transfusion because it just didn't feel right to me. I felt exhausted and depleted, but didn't feel like I needed that, or I wanted someone else's blood, to be honest. It just was weird. So I denied that. We end up getting into a room eventually. The baby had to be checked in because it was just like the rules with the hospital. Like, he had to be checked in there because he was a baby in the hospital with me. So he wasn't really the patient, but he also was. It was like a weird thing. So my husband consented for them to do like a blood sugar check, like a heel prick, which was silly because he was fine. He was healthy, but he did consent to that, and he was fine. They did like all the testing and stuff on me, whatever. We get up to a room, and then we have doctors, nurses coming in, like asking all the different questions, all the typical stuff, like how you're feeling, how you're doing, how's the baby. They want checking the temperature, checking your heart rate, blood pressure, all that stuff. And they were still like keeping an eye on me because of my bleeding. I was still bleeding. My numbers weren't ideal for what they wanted. And I didn't want to do any of the newborn screening testing things they do there. So we denied literally everything other than the blood sugar check. And
which you can do.
Which you can do. You do have a choice. Hospital policies are not law. And we denied the vitamin K shot in the hospital. And we had so many different doctors and nurses coming in, pediatricians. One woman told me, well, look for bleeding, look out for symptoms, bleeding out of his eyes, ears, nose, mouth, penis, anus for up to 9 months. For 9 months, she told me to keep an eye out.
I've literally never heard that.
Yeah.
I've never even heard of a baby having that.
So
because you didn't do the vitamin K.
Because I didn't want to do the vitamin K shot.
Meanwhile, in 7 days, he will produce the vitamin K he needs to.
Yes. And the vitamin K is not a vitamin, folks. It is.
No.
It comes with a black box warning, and it's extremely toxic. So it's not a vitamin at all.
And in 7 days, they will start producing it as they need to.
As they need to. And there's a reason for it. It's a reason why they're created and their bodies produce different things at different times. So they tried to come in and scare us with all these different things. They tried telling us that it was mandatory that we do, I think it was a certain blood work panel screening to look for any, not deformities, but things like cystic fibrosis, different diseases, things like that they do like a typical blood panel check at the hospital. Yeah. And we didn't want to do that. It's not a policy. It's not like you can deny it.
Yep. They'll make you sign stuff, but
yeah. So at that point, I'm like, we need to get out of here. So I requested for an AMA, which is a form called Against Medical Advice, and you sign it and you leave. So I asked for that, and it took hours from that moment till the time we left because they, I believe, intentionally drug their feet. I had to talk with every doctor, every nurse, and they tried to
wanted to
scare
make
me.
you feel like you were making a bad decision leaving.
Yeah, definitely they did. And they wanted to know his pediatrician and like all the normal things. And we didn't have one picked out because I didn't intend on taking him to one because I didn't see there was a need. If there was a need and I thought there was something wrong, I would have done that.
Right.
Or I would have treated it as I saw fit because I'm his mom and I know best. So we did end up leaving, go home. I was on different, like I took some iron supplements. My dad brought over some liver, which is full of minerals and nutrients that I needed, and just took care of myself at home. And actually, I had CPS.
No.
Yeah, I had them call me. It was like a week after we left the hospital, after he was born.
What?
And it was, I just kind of like laughed because it was in the back of my head.
Like a worry.
Mm-hmm. And so the woman on the phone was so nice. She was very nice. She like was asking me about my birth and was like, oh, that's so awesome, blah, 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 blah. She's like, yeah, I just have to do this. It's a part of, like, you have to go through the paperwork to open and close a case. And
this was because?
So this was because they thought I would not take the baby to a pediatrician after I left the hospital. And because I asked her, I'm like, well, why? And she's like, well, the doctors there submitted this because they didn't think that you'd be taking him to a doctor after to follow up on any care. And I said, I was like, I'm not. I don't plan on to. I was like, I'm not taking my healthy baby into a place where you take sick babies. And he's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. I don't plan on doing that. And she's like, okay. So what they have to do, they had to come to my house within a certain time frame that they got the report to make sure, like, we have a crib, we have a place for him to live, and
meanwhile,
we're okay.
There are literal drug addicts who birth and have babies and CYS calling them.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they are. I have a hard time believing if they are. And coming in to check if you have a crib and see.
Yeah. What? And I get it because, like, there's bad people out there and there's bad parents and people do neglect their babies and there's horrible things that happen. So I get why that's in place. And I was so glad to have this woman that had to follow through and do her job. She was so nice. She came, was very understanding, and you had
nothing to hide.
There was nothing to hide. It was very upfront. We weren't taking him to the doctor. We weren't doing vaccinations. We weren't doing any of that. He still has never seen a medical doctor or pediatrician.
And look, he's one and thriving.
Yeah, he just turned one this past week on the 22nd.
He's doing all the things he should be doing.
Yeah.
On his own.
Doing great. So that happened, and that was like the end of dealing with that type of system. Mm-hmm. But it was great. I don't have any regrets other than I would look into postpartum care more than what I did. I didn't look into postpartum as much as I should have and prepared for it. I was really focused on, like, birth and the birth process and all the what ifs and
the baby
and preparing. But I would do it all over again. And actually, okay, so, like, this is brand new. And I don't even know. So I don't even know, like, if this is true. I might be pregnant again.
Oh my gosh.
Are you? Yeah, it wasn't planned.
Announcing this?
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe I am announcing it. So, like, if you guys are listening, I told my husband this morning, like, I might be pregnant. I don't know. Totally wasn't planned. But if I am, I plan on going this route again.
Okay.
So,
low-key might be a birth announcement. We don't. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I don't know. Faint, very, very faint second line. But
mine was.
Yeah. Faint lines that's
a line.
Still there. So I don't know. But yeah, there you guys.
Wow.
Get a sneak preview of.
So excited. If you are, life. Congrats. I'm excited.
Thanks. Yeah, me too. If I am, I don't know. But yeah,
that's okay.
It was just great. It was just a peaceful pregnancy and ideal labor, and it was just great.
I am in awe of you that you could do that on your own. That's amazing. It's beautiful. It really is, because you did what you preach. You trusted your body, trusted your baby, and look.
And that's what, and it came like at the very end of it, it was like around 43 weeks or give or take around there. I came to a realization, like, my baby is going to come out of me. I cannot be pregnant forever. And I just, like, came to terms with it almost.
Yeah.
And that's when I think I dropped that, is when my body could really relax.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's, like, a mind-body connection.
For sure.
And that's when labor started to happen. And I just kind of accepted that, and it happened. But yeah. And anyone's capable of doing it. You just have to you got to be willing to put in that work and to kind of break down those walls and the things that have been like indoctrinated in us as a society, and do the work for yourself, because you're totally capable of having the birth you want. And you have
the choice to anything that is happening to your body.
Yeah, there's always a choice. Even if your doctor or hospital, if they don't make it seem like there's a choice.
Find a new one.
There's always a choice. They work for you. There's plenty of providers out there that will support you. And you just got to find one that you like and that works well with you and for you. So,
or find a doula like Emily.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will highly recommend you to anyone and everyone, because you definitely helped make our experience a more of an experience that we wanted to have. So
yeah. Well, thanks. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you attain like your birth and pregnancy that you desire. So.
And you did. And you had that peach that literally saved my life after birth.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like random food I like throw in my bag. I'm like, peaches, granola bars, protein bars.
The peach saved my life after birth. I'm sitting there eating a peach, nursing Cash, getting stitched up.
Perfect. Better than like the diced like fruit cup of peaches.
I don't even know what they...
I don't even know if they would have that.
No, probably
I don't
not.
know. That's funny.
That was better. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your birth story and all your knowledge, and just letting everybody know the perks of a doula, because I don't feel like enough people know about what a doula is and the benefits of having one.
Yeah. So. Yeah, thanks for having me. I do have a workshop coming up
on
how to have a natural hospital birth.
Okay.
So that's coming up. I don't know when this is going to be aired or not, but I plan on doing more of those to just educate the women in our society and locally. So
I love that. When will it be?
It is March 11th.
Oh, okay. This will be aired before then.
Okay. My mind is like going blank.
You're like, what day? I don't know.
Yeah.
In March. So we have plenty of time.
Yeah. Facebook has it on my Facebook page, Emily Fry Doula. So you can look on there, reach out if you have questions. But
we'll share your information too.
I appreciate that.
For anybody to reach out, questions, or
It's awesome. And I have a podcast like this that are just like real moms telling their real stories in life.
That's what we want. We want to cover as much. We don't want it to be leaning more towards any way. We want everybody just have the knowledge and just hear different experiences, because it's different for everybody.
Right. It is. Birth is unknown, and it's great.
And then motherhood is just a whole nother.
Yeah.
Whole nother thing. Well, maybe you'll come on again.
Yeah. Who knows? We'll see. We'll have to have like a follow up. See what happens.
Is Emily pregnant? Is she having another baby?
I don't know.
Well, thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.